Welcome to the fabulous 80s TV Ladies podcast, where we look at female-driven television shows from the 1980s.
80s TV ladies, so sexy and so pretty. 80s TV ladies, living out into the city. 80s TV ladies, often treated kind of working hard for the money in a man's world. 80s TV ladies.
Hello, I'm Sharon Johnson.
And I'm Susan Lambert-Haddam. We are so lucky to have the best guests on our show, Sharon. Our guests have been fabulous, and today is no different. I want to thank costumer Joyce Unruh Goodwin for connecting us with our very special guest today, costume designer Eilish Zebrasky.
Eilish was Aaron Spelling's head costumer for 26 years.
Aaron Spelling, for those who don't know, was one of television's most successful and prolific television creators. He has 218 producer and executive producer credits, from Love Boat, Art to Hart, Charlie's Angels, Charmed, Beverly Hills 90210, just goes on and on. For a while, the network ABC was often referred to as the Aaron Broadcasting Company because of how many huge shows he had on that network.
Welcome, Eilish. We're thrilled to have you with us today.
We're in person. It's always a special treat. So thank you for joining us.
Oh, you're welcome. Thank you for having me.
I am so happy we finally got to have you on the show.
Yes.
and get to talk about the 80s and costuming and all things Hollywood and fabulousness. So tell us about your journey coming to Hollywood. Where did you get started?
Okay. I was born in Belfast in Northern Ireland. And when I was about 14, I saw a movie on television. Well, I saw a movie in the theaters. We didn't have the television when I was 14. And it was Palm Springs weekend. And after I saw that movie, I said, that's where I want to go. I want to go to Palm Springs, California. Well, when I was 18, I asked my father, no way, daughter. He said, you're too young. And then when I became 20, I still had this urge to go to America. I'm one of 9 children. My 3 older brothers all went to England. And my dad says, well, don't you want to go to England to be with your brothers? No, it's America. I have to go to America. So the day that I was going to go and book for a holiday camp, in the paper, they were wanting to interview girls to go to America. So I went to the hotel and I had my money for the deposit for my vacation. So I went and I met up with it was actually a German company and they were in between Ireland and America. I interviewed with him and still hadn't told my dad. He had no idea. And he said that if you want to go, I can get you out of here in 2 weeks for New York. I said, no. Has to be California. Now, I didn't know California from New York. I haven't a clue. I went home, of course, told Dad, and he goes, okay, now I know you're okay and you still want to go. And in 6 weeks, I was in America. But now I was sponsored by a family. That's what they do.
And so what was the interview for? What was the job?
The interview, they were looking for like governors, governesses and that. So I came over to this family and they were in Toluca Lake, not a bad area. And they were honestly, they couldn't have been nicer. And they were a Jewish family and I'm, Catholic, but they were so good to me. And I lived with her after a year and I paid her back my fee for the airlines. You pay her back. And then I wanted to go off and get another job. And she says, great, I knew you weren't going to stay with us forever. But she said, I'd love you to stay with us. You can live. I had my own little cottage in the back. I had everything, my own bedroom, bathroom, closet. It was incredible. So I could have my friends over and not be in the main house. So I had just this great job. And I was across the street almost from Warner Brothers.
Yeah, you were right in the middle of the studios.
I was right there. And then what happened was I went off to do jobs and that they didn't work out. I wouldn't even go into those jobs.
Were they other like nanny governess jobs? Or
no,
they
were office jobs, this and that. And if I'd had these jobs now, I could be a rich lady. I was propositioned by boss 3 times. And I thought, oh God, and I'm only 20, only 21. So I'm thinking, is this the way it's going to be if I need a job? So my lady who I was living with, she said, Eilish, my friend is looking for someone to do baby clothes. Well, I sew, because that's what, when I worked in the factory, that's what I did. I made men's jackets. And I did that for 5 years. So I had good experience in that department. So I went to work for this lady, and she kept raising my salary every week because I was fast also. Because in Ireland, we worked on a conveyor belt. So the more work you did, the more money you made. So I was always real fast. And I met Tony, my husband, after 6 months. He moved into, he was in an apartment, talked to the lady next door who happened to be at Warner Brothers. And he said to her, do you think you could get my girlfriend a job at Warner Brothers? She sews. And she says, well, let me check into it. The very next, I got a call from Warner Brothers, and they asked me to start work the next day.
Oh.
That was on Camelot.
Oh my gosh.
The movie Camelot.
And they say it never snows in Camelot.
Oh, that's right. And she, I said, wow, they're not even going to interview me. And she said to me, would you like to know your salary? I said, oh, well, it doesn't matter. But it was like 4 times what I was making at the little baby shop. So anyway, I went to work the next day at Warner Brothers. Didn't tell the lady who I was working for. I just told her a lie. I said, I hurt my ankle and I have to take off because I wasn't sure if I was going to like Warner Brothers. So I started in the tailor shop, and I was working on the clothes for Camelot, making the peasants' clothes. And this gentleman who ran the tailor shop, I don't think he really thought, I'm 21 years old. I don't think he really thought I could do this. So he'd hand me a bundle of clothes with a sketch and here. And he always had a big cigar hanging out his mouth. So I went off and I did it. Come back and he goes, you finished it already? And I said, yeah. So he'd hand me another bundle. Well, by the end of the week, one of the workers came to me and said, you need to slow down.
You're making us all look bad.
Swear to God. Or you're gonna get us out of work because you're doing too much. And in the business then, when the work was there, you worked. But if it slowed down, then they laid you off. And, it was that kind of a job. Mm-hmm. After 6 weeks, Jack Delaney, who was the head, he used to come down and visit me all the time. Didn't hurt. He was Irish. Jack Delaney. He owned property in the south of Ireland. So we would chat. And then he asked me, he said, I'd love to try you in the finished end. The finished end is where the costumes are. And you work actually right with the costumes. So he asked me questions and I said yes to everything, even though I really didn't know. But I thought once I get in there, all they have to do is show me.
And I'll figure it out.
Because he said, have you ever dyed leathers? And I said, I think I could do that. I know about colors. Well, before you know it, I'm learning, and here I'm dyeing and mixing dyes, and that was it. And then I worked on that movie, it was John Truscott, and I met a lot of people on that movie. And so when that movie was over, then you go on, this lady would call me a supervisor, and she said, I like the way you worked on Camelot, and I'd love you to come and work with me on this. And from there, it was just up the ladder. So when I went up to the main department, I met a lot of people. And then I went on to I went and worked at Berman's costume shop for 3.5 years.
And where was that?
That was on Highland.
And that wasn't with the studio. That was with
it wasn't with the studio, but it was still connected because we were all under a union.
Okay.
So if you were going to go get costumes from Berman's, they kept it all in the union. But if he wasn't licensed under our local, then we wouldn't be allowed to go there and rent. So I worked there, which was great because then I was right away in a union and right away in a retirement plan. It 21. That was pretty good.
What was the job at Berman's? And how is that different?
I was in there and I worked with this one girl, Sandy, who I met on Camelot, and she brought me over. And after about a year, she got very ill. She had to leave, so they put me in charge of the department. So what we would do is costumers would come in, say they're doing a big movie. They would come to Berman's, and it was huge. They also had a place in France, and they had a place in London. Big. The biggest one is London, and that's Angels. It's called Angels now. But so they would come in, supervisors, the designers would come in sometimes. And I met Cecil B. DeMille's there. So if they're doing a big movie, my job was to pull racks of clothes, say from the 1800s. Or the 1920s or whatever. So I would set up racks of clothes for them. The designer would come through, check them out. These are all great, or I don't need this. And so that was my job. Some of them would come in and fit. We had a couple of fitting rooms. They would come in and fit. Rock Hudson came in one time for a fitting. He was doing some war movie. Can't remember all these names. But we did shows out of there also, like theater shows.
So when a star like Rock Hudson comes in and to be fitted, were you the one fitting them? Were you dealing with them?
No, that was the men's department. Yes. Yeah, that was a separate. So I worked there for 3.5 years, on almost 4, till Mr. Berman, he was selling, he was getting up there. So he was closing the company. So we closed the company, and just before somebody came in, a supervisor, Edna Taylor, and she said, Eilish, I'd like you, because you meet them coming in, they come in and rent over 3 years, you get to be friends with them. And I had been asked before if I would come and work for them, but I liked being where I was. And so I waited till I could no longer, and I had to leave. So she asked me what she wanted to do. She wanted me to work with her. And my first real movie on by myself, not doing the costumes, so working on the set, was Butterflies Are Free.
Wow.
And that was with Goldie Hawn and Eddie Albert Jr. and Eileen Heckart. That was fun. That was fun. So that's how
you started.
That's how I started. And I worked with the gentleman on the show was Seth Banks. Seth became like my brother, protecting me. And then Seth was very popular in the business. So Seth went on to another movie, took me with him, and that's how it worked.
That's how it worked.
And what was your job on set when you
I would
started
take
working
care
with
of
them?
all the lady stars.
Mm-hmm.
Like when I did Goldie, I had to just take care of Goldie and Eileen Heckart, and then Seth took care of the men. That was an easy show. And then I did another show with Seth, Oklahoma Crude. That was Faye Dunaway and George C. Scott. And I took care of mainly Faye. Believe me, she was one person.
She was a one.
I had to take care of Faye. But we got along great. I got along great with her. So then I worked on 2 movies, Barbra Streisand movies, Funny Girl. Seth also did that. Funny Girl and Funny Lady.
Oh.
I did both of those shows, but mainly on the set. I wasn't doing, except one day we had Bob Mackie was the designer, and Irene Sheriff did the first one. She did the first one was Funny Girl, right?
Yeah.
Funny Lady Bob did, and Ben. God, what's his name? Ben Vereen.
Oh, Ben Vereen. Okay.
Ben was doing this dance, and we're all sitting there down in the audience. He's up on stage, and he throws his leg up over the chair, and his pants rip from seam to seam. And the director started screaming and hollering. Well, luckily, I can sew. So we got Seth Banks, my friend. I said, Seth, get me they were white pants. I said, get me a T-shirt. And I got a T-shirt because they had to finish the scene. We were all sitting around. And I put a triangle in Ben's pants and said Bob Mackie was able to make him another pair. But they weren't stretch. It should have been stretchy material, but we learn as we go along.
Oh my God. So you fixed Ben Vereen's pants for Funny Lady?
Funny Lady.
I'm out. That's fantastic.
Yeah, I get all over the place when I talk. After that, I did another movie with Faye, Towering Inferno.
And Paul Newman, right?
And Paul, I met Paul. I met Steve
Paul. Should we call him Tall Paul?
Steve McQueen, Robert Wagner. I mean, there were so many stars in that one. But you were there for Faye. I helped there, but once Faye got there, she didn't want me near anybody else. I had to be with her.
Yeah. So forgive my naivete, but it sounds like what your job was to make sure that their to get them in their costume, and make sure it was fitted properly and
make sure and I had you have somebody to sew for you because the costumers are not allowed to do that. And make sure she had the right earrings on with this outfit.
Right.
So when I lined her outfits up for the day, it was the outfit, the shoes, the pantyhose, different bras for different outfits, the jewelry, and that was my job. But sometimes I was on a show where I had 8 women to take care of, and you did the same thing. Mm-hmm. You just, the night before I used to try and do, and then you make sure that if it just needs a little spot cleaning, I would do it rather than send it out. And that was my job.
And so can you walk us through because not everybody knows the costume credits, right? Can you walk us through costume credits in movies and television? Wardrobe supervisor versus assistant costume designer versus...
Yes, the top of the course is the designer. That's the designer of the picture. And then under the designer is usually the supervisor. The designer usually doesn't bother with the other staff, like the male costumer who's on the set, or sometimes we need 2 or 3, depending on how big the picture is. We'll have 3. And a lot of time, actors like a male star with them rather than a woman because you're in there getting them dressed. And then they would have the woman costumer. But usually it's just one supervisor under the designer.
And
that's how it goes.
And then however many costumers you need.
Exactly. And then on big days, I used to hire, once I got to Erin, I would make sure there was with day workers, like maybe I only need you 3 days a week, and I'd try and give that girl her 3 days because it makes a difference with their union.
Okay, so that is helpful. So at the time, you were a costumer doing the costumer job.
Yes,
on
the set.
On the set.
Or you could say set costumer, but they usually just say costumers. Everybody wants their titles changed, right?
Yes.
Everybody wants a proper title.
I assume you were enjoying this job?
Oh, it was the greatest job. I loved it. And I would get up the crack of dawn, 4:30 every morning. Sometimes I had to be on the set at 5:30. That part was the hardest part. But when I was young, so it didn't matter. Sometimes I'd get up at 3:30 because I had to be at MGM at 5 to set up the costumes. When I was doing Barbra Streisand's movies, loads of dancers. So I would have to get all those dancers all set up.
That's amazing. That's amazing. And so when you were, and you were in the IATSE union?
Yes.
Okay. And so when you were doing these shows, like, are you sent from show to show? Or is it just you were following the designer?
I would have to be, say I was hired, say to do a funny girl. So I'm hired in the beginning of the show, and I work through the end of that show.
Okay.
So because you get familiar with everyone, they get familiar with you, and I'm familiar with the costume. So no, you're on there, so you're hired for the 4 months.
And it's such a personal thing, someone helping you get dressed.
You're in there with them and you're doing bras or you're fixing. It is. It is. And some of them, most of them are not. We're all women, even when I started working for Erin, by then I was a designer and I had to start pulling the kids, the younger kids would come in. And I'm in the room and the boy would say, Eilish, now I have no underwear on. I'm okay with that if you are. I said, no, I'm not okay with it. Because number one, these are all new clothes from wherever, Neiman Marcus or Saks. You cannot try pants on with no underwear. I said, I can't do that. So I said, don't you move till I get you underwear. So I would have to go out and bring him back a pair of, he goes, and he was, thereafter though, he always came with underwear.
Eilish will teach you when the young stars show up in underwear.
You better have underwear on, because I wouldn't let them try the clothes on, just for sanitary reasons. So yeah, that was funny.
Oh my gosh. All right. So you're working movies. What was the most exciting, movie or star to work with, or,
what was I loved it when, I was working at Columbia and I was working with Grady Hunt at the time. I was his assistant, and I just, we'd had our son. Our son was about 6 months old, and Grady called me and he goes, Eilish, I would love, because I worked with Grady before doing movies of the weeks and what have you. And he said, I'd love you if you would work with me as my assistant and oversee all the shows. That was my dream.
And that was, and what shows were you doing?
Then we were doing Police Story, Police Woman, Fantasy Island. What other shows were we doing? Then I can't do, those are the ones that I remember. Okay. But I would oversee all those shows and make sure, like I would still do Police Story, buy the clothes for that. Fantasy Island, that one I did. I would shop all the clothes.
Did you come up with the suits?
Yes. Oh, the white suits?
The white suits?
No. That, because they'd already done a Fantasy Island years before. And that was Aaron's show.
Right.
So here I am now working at Columbia. But Fantasy Island was Aaron Spelling's show. That's how I got connected to Aaron Spelling.
It was on Fantasy Island.
Fantasy. There was another dear friend of mine, Nolan Miller. I met him one time on Fantasy Island. It was November, freezing cold. Ava Gabor, early in the morning, I get a phone call because I always made sure I got to the studio early. I said I could never be home and get a call that the actress is unhappy. So I get a call, and my set girl said, Eilish, Miss Gabor's outfit isn't working. It doesn't fit her. And I get in my cart and get down to the set. It was overcast. It was a horrible day. And it's 6:30 in the morning, and here's this gorgeous 6'4", 6'5" man, Nolan Miller. And he said, I am so sorry. And he had this navy trench coat on. He said, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. I said, don't worry, Mr. Miller. And the reason Nolan was doing her clothes is because Nolan was in her contract. So whatever Ava did, Nolan had to do her clothes. Like when she did, what was one she did about the farmers and
Green Acres?
Nolan did all her clothes.
Oh, wow.
That was her deal. So I said, he said, I'm so embarrassed that Aaron asked me to do her clothes when you're capable of, I said, no, honestly, thank God I don't have an ego. I just want to work and everybody get along. So I went in there, and then she was sick. She was coughing. She had a cold. So I fit her because my fitter wasn't in yet. So I put some pins because I could sew. It was a cowgirl outfit, little short mini skirt and the whole bit. So I took it up to the shop. The girl was there by then, got it fixed, came back, put it on her, end of story. That was it. There was no problem. Cameras weren't held up. So Mr. Miller called me that day, and he goes, God, he said, I'm so impressed the way you handle that. He said, because people would scream. The other people would have yelled at me, and I didn't get it. So he did say to me then, he said, if you ever want to come and work for Aaron Spelling, because Nolan was already friends with Aaron Spelling doing Aaron's shows. So I said, no, I'm good where I am. Then we did another big costume show. I mean, we had hundreds of Fantasy Island dress-up costumes. So I went to 3 different places and pulled all the costumes out. And Nolan goes, I don't even know why I'm checking these, but Aaron asked me to come and look at them. I said, fine, don't worry about it. But he was embarrassed.
Because you were that was your job, but he had to be
Aaron
there.
had wanted him to come look, because Aaron doesn't know me.
Right.
So, but I told Nolan, I said, Nolan, it's okay. Or Mr. Miller, I called him. Then later on, he called me and he said, I really, really would love you to come and work for Aaron Spelling. He said, you know, we could use you over there. I said, no, I'm not really interested. What happened was there was a movie of the week and we had women producers, 3 women, and they all had their own idea how the 4 ladies should be dressed. And it's a secretary. I can't even remember the name of it. And I said,
a movie or a TV show?
TV.
TV.
So I said,
it wasn't 9 to 5 TV show.
No, well,
Okay.
oh no, it wasn't that one.
Okay.
But it was about The Office, and they were telling me, dress this actress this way, and I'd love this look for her. And I said, okay, but you know, these certain looks aren't going to look good on her body. You dress a body. You don't, you know, the character, yes, but you still got to work out the body. So I went ahead, I shopped for days and fit them and did the whole work. Well, when the 3 producers saw it, they go, Eilish, we don't like these at all. I said, really? I said, neither do I, but this is what you wanted. Grady Hunt was not in the picture, although Grady always got the credit. I was never on the credit. It was always Grady. That's the way the business ran in those days. So then I went out and so they said, okay, you dress the girls, whatever you think. I said, they're secretaries. It's not like they're big, important, you know. So I went out, got the ladies all dressed. They had like 5 changes each. Show went great. Everybody was happy. Then they were doing the premiere of it at a theater. So I went there and I was so excited because I really thought I'm getting credit on this one. After all my work, no credit.
None.
I was so upset. Remember, I went home and I was fuming all night. I couldn't sleep. So I went into work the next morning. And I Grady, because we always got there at 6 or 6:30. I said, Grady, I have to let you know I'm very angry today. And I said, I didn't even get credit on that. And you know how hard I worked. So I was furious. So he said, Eilish, I'm sorry. And he couldn't, and I was on, it wasn't a salary. The hours that I worked, you got paid for. And Grady would say to me, well, just add more hours. I said, I've already got 24 hours on a day's slip. I can't add any more. So, because he was afraid, unfortunately, to ask for a raise. So I called Mr. Miller that day and I said, Nolan, is that offer still open? And he said, yes. Are you serious? And I went for an interview and that was it. And when we were at the wrap party for Fantasy Island, Aaron Spelling made a comment on the stage. He said, I know I'm taking away one of your people, but she's coming to work over at my studio now. That was me. So I met him. His secretary came over and she said, Mr. Spelling would like to meet you. So I went out to the lobby and there was Aaron. Oh, he was so sweet. Put his arms around me and I went to work for Aaron Spelling. I went for an interview and they asked me, of course, my salary, and I gave them a figure, which I should have tripled.
I was going to say, so did you bump it up at least a little bit from where you were?
I bumped it up double, but they didn't. I said, okay, we can, that's no.
Oh, wow.
And that's when you know, like,
I knew, I said, darn it. But I'm not a greedy person, so I didn't want to sound ridiculous. But then shortly after that, they did give me another $300-400 a week more. Once I started running the department and setting it up. And
I was going to say, so when did you end up head costumer?
as soon as I went over there, that was the job. I was going to be the head of Aaron Spelling's wardrobe now, the head of the wardrobe. They still had a gentleman there who was running it. But, he was an older gentleman, and the unit manager who interviewed me, he did call me and he said, Eilish, I have a difficult time firing this person. I said, I'm happy with that. Let him. I don't want anybody to lose their job. I said, I'm happy with that. But he did say, but you have to make all the rules, because Aaron didn't want this gentleman making any more rules. But Aaron didn't know that this guy was still working. So after they found out, like a couple of months later, he got fired, and that's when I got my $400 more a week. But I felt bad losing his job. But I went in and they built a whole new department. I told them what I needed and the colors, and they let me go shopping for furniture. And the first one to come in was on Charlie's Angels.
And where was this?
Fox Studio.
At Fox Studios. Okay.
And I remember Jaclyn Smith come in for her first fitting.
For Charlie's Angels?
For Charlie's Angels. And Erin come over, of course, to see her. And she said to Erin, wow, look how fancy this is. Because before, where the girls would fit in that, it was really pretty tacky.
It was like a closet.
And I said, oh, God, I said, you fit actresses in this? It was horrible. So they give me stretches of ground to work with. And I built the wardrobe department.
Sounds like quite a dream job.
It was.
Oh, my goodness.
Honestly, like on Sundays, I couldn't wait for Monday. Honestly. I loved it.
On Sundays, I couldn't wait for Mondays. We should all have that dream job on Sundays. So Melissa had a question about what your union local number is. Do you know?
Oh God, it was 705. That was the costumer. And then the Designers Guild. Oh God.
It's a different one. Okay.
Was that usual for a producer like Aaron Spelling to have his own wardrobe department, have somebody like you that handled wardrobe, or was that sort of outside of what was
It was
normal?
kind of outside because Fox Studio had their own wardrobe department, but Aaron Spelling was in Fox, but he kept it separate. And Warner Brothers, no matter what movie comes in, you all have to work out of Warner Brothers, or if you go to MGM. So Aaron was totally separate. It was his company.
Oh, that's fantastic.
It was his company.
And he was like, was he already the king, or was he ascending?
He was there. I mean, at this point now, when I went to work for him, he was doing Charlie's Angels, Love Boat.
He had done The Rookies.
He was doing that. Yes, he was doing the one with Heather Locklear. Was that The Rookies?
T.J.
Hooker.
Yes.
T.J. Hunter.
He was doing that one.
I'm combining T.J. Hunter.
But good.
whatever.
I'm glad you girls remember. But that one was already farmed out. Also, they were doing that somewhere else. We were also doing the three guys. Terrible. The guys, and then they had the blonde girl, Lipton.
Peggy Lipton?
Yes, that one. What was that show?
The Mod Squad.
That one
Was it the Mod Squad?
Mod Squad? Okay.
Okay.
So Aaron had all of that going. And then when I started, and then we were doing, he just started Vegas. So that was brand new for me.
Oh, so the TV show Vegas.
Yes.
Yes.
So, and when I went for this interview, I did tell Norm Henry, who was kind of my boss, I said, I'm not going to come over to Aaron Spelling and run a department unless I get to do some shows. Because that's what I wanted. Mm-hmm. He says, well, how are you going to run a department and work on shows? I said, I'll do it. And if I can't, then... So I did it. And what I did was I hired people that I knew their work. And I put them on shows. And they were the supervisors, but I would oversee them. I did all their budgets, how much money they were allowed. I would have to go, if we had 5, 6, 7 shows, I had to go to every single meeting. And Aaron had a great thing. He did a concept show where all the department heads would get together. So all your ideas were together. Set director, the designer of the wardrobe, the designer of the sets. And then there was never any, like, he's going to paint the walls yellow, say. Well, I better make sure I don't have anybody in yellow. Otherwise, they're going to fade into. So those were all the things that I learned.
It was really well.
I learned so much when I went to Spelling. I really did, because he had an incredible mind. I remember one time we sat through 3 meetings together. Everybody went out, but Aaron and I stayed there because we were He never opened a book. And we would go from this show to that show to that show. And the guy, somebody would say, oh, well, that's when they get up and they're going to jump out the window. Aaron goes, no, they don't jump out the window. And he would say it in a nice manner. Mm-hmm. And the guy goes, and he's the writer. And Aaron would go, he doesn't jump out the window. And he hasn't opened that book. Had an incredible memory.
He could keep it all in his head.
Aaron was
all those shows.
brilliant.
That's amazing.
And he always thought about, it's all about the look. And also, he always thought about the people in the Midwest. And here he goes, well, no, we can't do that, guys, because what do people in the Midwest know about blah, 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 whatever the situation was. So he always did shows that everyone could relate to. And that was one thing I did notice about our shows.
That's amazing. And so of the shows, what would make you pick a show that you wanted?
I really loved doing Hotel. I did that for 5 years. And of course, Connie Seleca and I, became good friends because I spent so much time with her. I was even at her wedding. But that was a good show. And what I loved about it, we had guest stars every week, like Love Boat. Mm-hmm. And that's a fun. So you're not stuck with the same 10 people. You've got your principals, and then you had like 6 guest stars every show.
You have special guests every night.
That was my favorite. That's where, we had Elizabeth Taylor, we had Lana Turner. Those were the great times. And then Love Boat. Everybody wanted to do Love Boat. So, especially the ones that went to Europe.
So would they actually go?
Oh, yes. If they were going to, like they went to Egypt, they went.
Oh,
on a boat.
On the ship and got over to, oh yeah, they were real. And I remember getting, it was so funny, one show Linda Evans was doing, and who's the other one that was married to John Derrick? Not Bo, the first one.
Ursula
Thank
Andress?
you.
I don't know why I
Very
know that.
good.
Wow. That's
Ursula.
good, Sharon. Whew.
Ursula, and she was so funny because before our fitting, she went out shopping in Beverly Hills because she didn't live here. And she'd see some things and she'd go, oh, could you leave these for Eilish? Well, in the Beverly Hills, I shopped at every store you could think of. So she said, Eilish, you're a good name to know. I just say, oh, leave it for Eilish.
And they were like, yes, ma'am.
So they do. But they were going to China.
So the
rules and regulations, no red. They couldn't have any jeans they were so strict. And God forbid.
strict because of the rules in China.
Strict in China. Yes. They had to, it was such I had lists and lists of things that you cannot do.
Wow.
Yeah, so that was interesting. So you learn a lot.
I am still wrapping my head around the fact that it just never occurred to me that for Love Boat, they actually shot those on active cruises, going places and coming back from
Now, a lot of it, of course, is all on stage.
Right.
You go on stage and there's the pool and there's the restaurant.
Okay.
But I'm talking about the big shows like China. They went to Japan. They went to Alaska. As a matter of fact, on that Alaskan show, we got to make sure and we had to box it up and keep track of everything. And we sent it off, and then I get a phone call. Eilish, it's freezing. We don't have enough warm clothes. We've got to get some fur coats. So my friend and I went downtown, and I bought about 20 fake fur coats. They were like $50 each, but they used them on the show.
Oh my God! I want to track down the Alaska Love Boat.
Yeah, the Alaskan show. But any of those that went into certain countries, they were real. That's why people like Linda Evans would do those shows. Who was the other one?
They get a trip to China.
Shelley Winters. They wouldn't do just a regular Love Boat. But if they were going into another country, because, that's expensive. I did the Valentine show, but that just went to where they all go.
Oh, the Puerto Vallarta.
Yes, they went to those places. But the ones to Europe, I always would send, people who I really felt could handle it and do it. And because I'm not there.
Yeah. You have to make sure it's going to work.
Yeah, those would have to, I would imagine those could be tough because as evidenced by the lack of coats, you may forget or don't have something. Turns out you absolutely need.
You need it.
Yeah.
We thought we were covered, but they said, no, get us some of those fake. The producer called and said, just get us some fake fur coats. So that's what I did. And yes, they used them. But on the shows, we went over lists and lists. You know, we really were, and thank God we were pretty fortunate. We never really, nothing ever got lost or stolen, and that's always the case. When I was doing Butterflies Are Free, I went that morning because it went on for 4 months, and Goldie only had one outfit, basically, bras and panties. And I went to the line 7 o'clock in the morning to pick it up. Well, that wasn't there. So her blouse was missing and her underwear was missing.
Are you serious?
Oh, and this was a big feature film. Then it was $2.5 million, which was a lot of money back in the 60s. And, but what it was, I know that somebody else was doing a commercial and their wardrobe got stolen.
But what, so do you think people took Goldie Hawn's underwear because it was Goldie Hawn's underwear, or because they just wanted they just took it? I have no idea. They just took it. And it was this lady that we had in the evening. She would come in late, like 6 o'clock. And she would do hand washing, like if somebody had a special bra, which we didn't send to the cleaners, sure, or
their pantyhose, nylons, that was all hand washed every single night.
Wow.
So Goldie's blouse and her underwear was missing. So I sat with the ladies in the workroom, but I had to be on the set, and we cross-stitched. If you ever see the show, the blouse is a red, like a Mexican peasant blouse. And so I sat and cross-stitched those flowers.
Oh, my goodness.
Because you had to replace it.
I had to replace it, but the workroom, they were doing their part also. I was just helping because we only had a week to do it.
Oh, my gosh.
Before we went to San Francisco. But, I remember I was never so upset in my life. I said, that's it. I'm walking out that door. I was so scared. But, you know, and the director came to me and he goes, Eilish, what the F are you supposed to do? Bring her clothes home and sleep with them? That's what he said. But it's the first time I'd ever experienced anything like that. And it scared me. Scared me. Because then you start doubting yourself. God, did I? You know? So I know Barbara Eden was doing a commercial and they stole her Western shirt. That was another thing that was missing that same morning. So then I felt better when somebody else lost something.
Sure. It's not just me.
It wasn't me.
And on that note, let's take a break. And we're back. Oh my gosh. So you stayed with Aaron Spelling for
26 years.
26 years.
Unheard of. Nobody has a job at a studio for that long. But I loved it before. And then what happened was, over the years, he went public. And then, of course, everybody comes in and gets opinions. And so it did change. And then it was still Spelling, but not big like it was. I did the second Love Boat with Robert Urich. And I wasn't really a department head anymore, but I was still doing Aaron shows because there was no department anymore. Mm-hmm. And then after that, I did, it was a movie and it was a remake of a movie. And Kate Jackson was in it.
Kate Jackson was in it?
She did.
I know what it is. It was the girls' school.
Yes.
Yes, I know. Oh, man. Okay, I'm going to find it.
You know what it is.
I do.
But the funny thing was, I got to dress Kate Jackson because when I went on Charlie's Angels, they had fired Kate Jackson. And I thought, because, the stories that I heard about Kate Jackson. But I got to meet her on that other show, and she was so sweet. She goes, I wish you'd have done Charlie's Angels in the beginning. And also I got to meet Farrah Fawcett, who also didn't want to do anymore. And Farrah, I also had worked with Farrah a zillion years ago on Harry O.
Oh, my goodness. Yeah.
Yeah, so it was really kind of, that was called Harry O. But I loved Farrah. But she was a girl, you could put anything on her.
And it looked good.
It was great.
Satan's Schools for Girls.
Yes, that's it.
That's the Kate Jackson.
So I did, yeah.
And who else was in it?
Doherty.
Shanen Doherty. Shanen played Kate's part. So that's when I met Shanen. And then when Charm came around, there was somebody on it for, I think this one particular designer did it for 2 years. And then they wanted to switch designers. And that's when I got the job. And I did it for 7 years.
Wow.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah. 7 years.
So you don't get bored. You stay at the job.
Never. I never get bored. And I've always been that person. I love going to that job every day, the same. Because our business, you could be working on this 3 months and then you're off to Europe on the next movie and you're off here. And I like stability. I really love stability.
All right, can you tell us a little bit, because you're working for Aaron Spelling, but somehow you end up being a costumer for Angela Lansbury, and that's not a spelling show.
No, Angela was not a spelling show. Angela would change designers pretty much and her show went for 11 years?
Murder, She Wrote, yes.
Yes. So she would change. And then I guess this one unit manager who used to work for Aaron mentioned to Angela, well, you should try this girl, Eilish. And didn't hurt. Angela's mom was born in Belfast, and I'm in Belfast.
There's a little Irish mafia going on.
There is something
Hollywood.
going on. Yeah, all you have to do is say you're Irish. And so apparently I couldn't do that because, apparently Angela called Aaron Spelling. And she said, I know it's not how we run things, but, I'd really love to meet this girl, Eilish. And if she could do just my clothes, I don't want her to do the whole show because that would take too much time away because I already had my own shows with spelling. But if she could just do my clothes. So I went one lunchtime and met Angela Lansbury. God, she was so lovely. And we just clicked and hit it, and that was it. And I did the last 4 seasons, and then I did a couple of her specials that she had, she'd do those. But Angela she had a beautiful setup, our own fitting room with the kitchen, and it was all just for Angela. And I would go in there. She said, just stay and have lunch, and I would sit there and do my work sometimes, paperwork. But I started bringing her things in, and she's so funny. She'd look at the tag. Eilish, this jacket's $800. I said, I know. I says, but look at it. She was shocked because I said, okay, so the jacket's $800. So we're going to use slacks with it that you already have in your closet. We already have the blouse. So we're only spending $800. So I had to talk Angela in to allowing me to bring her in more expensive clothes.
And was that for her, Angela, or was that for the character?
The
she
character.
was like, the character would not.
The character.
Yeah.
But Angela just didn't want to spend that kind of money. She was so funny. I says, well, I'm still within my budget because they allowed me so much money for her clothes.
So Angela didn't want to spend that kind of money for the show, or Angela didn't want to spend that kind of money because she's like, my character would never wear an $800 jacket.
Well, probably not. But, some of those $800 jackets look like you could still buy it at Target, right? If you press it and put the proper buttons on, you still got an $800 looking jacket. But Angela just was she didn't want to spend a lot of money. But what I loved about Angela was she'd come on the set in the morning because I was always there so early. She'd walk through, hi, John, how's the kids? Hi, Paul. She knew everybody on that show. It was amazing. And she did lovely Christmas parties for everybody and gifts. And they were so lovely to work with.
That is amazing.
Super to work with. Like I would go over in the afternoon. She says, come over in the afternoon, like around 4 o'clock. And I said, okay. And I'd get my job done with spelling. So it was luckily she was at Universal, which was close to my house. So it was all worked out well. And I'd stop in and she had a break. And she'd say to me, would you like a cuppa? I said, oh, I'd love a cuppa. I said, I'll make it. She says, no, you sit. I'll make it. She would get up and make the tea.
Angela Lansbury would make you a cuppa.
And then she'd bring out, she said, how about a bicky? A bicky was a biscuit.
Oh, I want a bicky with Angela Lansbury.
She was so sweet.
That is so sweet.
Which was so sweet because she said, you work so hard and you're running back and forth. So I appreciated that she appreciated.
That is amazing. And that Aaron Spelling, even though Murder, She Wrote was not an Aaron Spelling show. It had nothing to do with him.
Nothing, but he allowed me because of Angela.
When Angela, if you want to get away with something,
Get away with murder.
if you want to get away with murder, you get Angela Lansbury to call up Aaron Spelling and make it happen.
And we never crossed over, never interfered. It just was so easy. And like when I'd leave my house in the morning, I'd stop. If Angela had an early call, Universal was on my way, and then I'd go over to wherever we were at the time. We were all over the place.
All right. So your husband, Tony's in the room. Was she ever home during this time?
It's the first time I've ever seen her.
That's the first time you've seen her.
Yeah, I worked hours.
I managed the household. I did all the cooking. And
It was fabulous.
So your husband managed the household.
He
did all
took
the-
care of our son, his ball games, everything he had to go to. Even sometimes I'd try and make the ball games, and I'd have on my high heels and a little skirt, and I'd yank that skirt up and climb into the breeches so I could wave down to my son because he thought, oh, there's my mom, she made it. I tried so hard, but Tony took care of everything.
I was being interviewed, and they asked, what type of job does your husband have? And she said, oh, he just has an average job. And so when I got back to work, the people would say, oh, there comes Joe Average. So I got stuck with Joe Average for the rest of the time that I worked there.
Okay. Thank you for sharing that.
And it was like, oh, I didn't mean it that way. But you know how they are, these writers. That was People magazine when I did that one. Because I had made, another thing got me in trouble. I had made a comment. This is when Aaron went public. I said, oh, I love my job because you go out and you shop and it doesn't cost me any money. I just made a fun statement. Well, Nolan Miller, I said, Eilish, Aaron is so mad at you because you made that statement. But it was a cute statement. I just said, I might spending money, but it doesn't come out of my pocket. Yeah. So I sat down and I wrote Aaron Spelling a letter. And I said, Aaron, you of all people know how things are taken out of context. So he was happy. He called me and said he was fine with it. But it just how it's written.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. When people put things, you have to be so. When I was doing Angels, I would get a call and that I'd be on the phone with an interviewer for about 15 minutes. Then right away it was, okay, now Eilish, tell us the real gossip. What happens with the girls? Well, nothing happened. And even if it did, I'm going to tell them and get fired? No, you don't.
Yeah.
I'm not into that. But the girls, they all got along great.
We talk a lot about how sometimes women get a reputation that maybe they don't deserve because they're held to a different standard than men are. There's nobody ever going, hey, those two guys are in a show together. I bet they don't get along. Like you're not looking for trouble when it's two guys on a show together,
But they love to do the gossip and that on the ladies, I think. But I didn't see that much. I mean, the Angels, they all seemed to get along. Actually, I saw Jaclyn
Smith.
Jaclyn a while back still looks so gorgeous.
She looks amazing.
She looks better than she did
and she still has her costume, like her fashion line.
She does the fashion line, and she also does Calico Corners. The fabrics.
Oh, the fabrics.
If you go to Calico Corner, I said there's
the Jaclyn Smith
doing, exquisite taste. She really has. But she and Cheryl Ladd are still best friends.
Yeah. I think again, people like to stir up that trouble, particularly when it comes to women.
Well, when they're writing and trying to sell magazines, that's what sells.
Yeah.
It's right?
Yeah, but it's especially in shows where the characters have a certain relationship. For some reason, they try to put that on women actors, that they're supposed to be like their characters, where it's a job. They come in, they play a part, they go home.
They've got a family to go home to, and it's a job.
Yeah, nothing wrong with that.
Nothing wrong with that. I remember one time I had said to Angela, so I said, so Angela, when you and Peter go home, because her husband was the executive producer and he was there with her, so devoted to each other. So I said, when you go home, you have someone and your meal's all ready for you? She goes, no. She said, Peter and I go home. I mean, she's Angela Lansbury. She says, no. She said, I'll make the salad and Peter will either grill a piece of chicken or fish. She said, no. She said, do you have your meals cooked for you? I said, yeah, I have my husband. He has my dinner and my glass of wine all ready for me.
Oh my gosh, that is amazing. Now, we're going to jump ahead a little bit.
Go ahead.
We're going to jump into the Marvel universe because you're credited on
that. I've no idea. I swear to God, I don't know where that came from.
Oh, so that you
That's
have
not me.
not worked on.
But it's another Eilish.
There's another Eilish?
Yeah.
But not another Eilish Zebrasky.
No, but that's what I said. Tony, you just showed that to me, love, yesterday.
It's on your IMDb. I was
that's
okay.
not me.
So that's not you.
No,
You've not
and
worked
then-
on Spider-Man, Avengers.
My son would be over the moon if I did, but no, Mom. Those are all big features. No, I don't know. But it said she was an assistant costumer.
Okay,
So
that's
I don't
interesting.
know why and her name was Eilish, and it's spelled the same way as mine.
All right. Well, we're going to have to, I don't know.
We're going to
now.
have to go, yeah.
We're going to have to investigate.
I remember when
We're going to get Angela Lansbury on it. She's going to make a few phone
Angela,
calls.
she'll figure it out.
I do want to talk about some of the favorite actresses or moments that you've had with some of your favorite actresses. And I know one of them is with Elizabeth Taylor.
Elizabeth was, she did one of our hotels. And Nolan, of course, Nolan Miller did her clothes, and they were really close friends. And this was after, I met her on hotel, but then years later, it was her 75th birthday party, so Nolan made her 2 gowns for her to choose. And then she had gotten, she was having problems with her back, and so Nolan wanted me to come with him to help get her dressed, in their certain bra and everything. And while we were there, she has amazing setup. She had this fabulous big room. It's like a dressing room, but there was a sink there for like a salon type sink to have her hair done. And she had this closet, and she said to her assistant, I think his name is Tim, take Eilish in and show her my jewelry. She was like a little girl with her jewelry. And she was playing with these earrings. They had to be about 3 inches.
Wow.
There was 140 diamonds in each earring, and she called it the waterfall.
Okay,
Here.
yes.
She goes, here, try them on. But anyway, I went into this closet. He opens it up, and it was probably longer than this area. And it was drawer after drawer, and I opened up the drawer, and it was just solid diamonds. And I said to Tim, these all real? Every single piece. She said, Elizabeth does not have any fake jewelry. But it was like, there must have been 40 drawers and 4 levels down.
Wow.
And he said, this isn't the big stuff.
That's locked away somewhere.
That's locked in a vault somewhere. But I took out, he says, touch it, do whatever you want, try it on. I took out a crucifix, and it was diamonds, and then in the center, about the size of my little finger, it was an emerald. I said, this is real? I mean, you're talking millions.
Yeah.
But it was laying in a drawer.
Well,
Sounds like the most incredible jewelry shop that one could ever walk into.
It was unbelievable. And she was so sweet. So sweet. And in her dressing area, it was so cute. There was a picture of her, Elizabeth, giving Richard Burton, she was cutting his hair in this photograph. I said, oh, Miss Taylor, you cut hair? She goes, oh, yeah, I used to cut. That was so cute. That was because I cut Tony's hair, so I was fascinated when I saw her cutting hair.
But what is it about 80s fashion, do you think, that is so resonant? Like, I think it's still fascinating to people, the 80s fashion.
Well, if you think about it, the 30s and 40s, they were still fashionable. And then the 40s might have changed a bit, and that maybe had to do because of the war and everything. 50s was not, I don't think, all that cool. 60s was a mixture of what? In the 70s, we kind of lost those. And it was the hippies. And then come the 80s. And I think the 80s turned everything around, and we got all more glamorous. Whereas we didn't have that glamour in the 70s. Yes, some people did. But I think the 80s became bigger. And then there were other shows besides. I think Dynasty was probably the most glamorous of all shows. But we also spent a fortune. I mean, $40,000 an episode.
On clothes?
Wow.
In the 80s.
In the 80s. That's a big budget.
That was unheard of. But Aaron was whatever they need for his thing was the image on that screen. And if they complained about it, Aaron would say, well, maybe don't do a dinner scene so you'll save on that. It has to go into the costumes. He was so big on that. And in our show, and then I think people used to get together, if you remember. They'd get together on whatever night Dynasty was on and they'd dress up and put the hats on. Ladies did that.
To watch the show.
To watch the show together.
Watching parties in the 80s for Dynasty.
Yes. I did try to watch the new one and I thought, there's no Joan Collins. There's only one Joan. I mean, really.
And was it fun to work with those ladies?
She was great. She was great. She was another great friend of Nolan Miller's. Joan was just, that was her, and she was so glamorous. I mean, a friend of mine spent some time with her in Europe and sent me pictures, and even just sitting around lounging, Joan looked gorgeous. Makeup, hair, beautiful.
So did they get to keep the clothes that they wore in the shows?
No. What happened was a good question. When I went over there, what Aaron Spelling was doing at the end of the season, the 3 Charlie's Angels or what other show, they'd come up with a big truck or a van and clean everything out. They took everything. So I had a meeting with Norman Henry because I had no clothes left. Like for extras, throw a little T-shirt on an extra so you don't have to go buy clothes for extras. I needed the extra stock, nothing that would be recognizable. And so I went to Norm and I said, Norm, I said, do you think Aaron would go for, if the actors want their clothes, they should pay for them. And he goes, Aaron would never go for that. I said, why not? Like when a guest comes on Love Boat, they have 5 outfits, gorgeous. They're fitted to your body to a T. I would pay half price. I said, just give it to them for half price. So if that outfit is $400, they'll get it for $200. Do you know that never had a qualm? And they did. They bought their clothes.
So he did allow it.
He did allow it. He did allow it, and it worked. And even at the end of Charlie's Angels, each season, the girls would come up and go through their racks and put a rack, and I would go through it or have one of the assistants do it, get it all priced together. Sometimes it was $7,000, $20,000, but they paid for it.
That's so interesting. Now, what was he doing? They weren't just like dumping those clothes. They were selling them or
what
costuming
we would do
them.
for a period of time, I also started a rental. I suggested, let's do rental because all my friends who work out in the business, they go, God, Eilish, I wish we could rent clothes from you. Because Aaron Spelling had a great wardrobe department. All our shows, if you think about it, they were more glamorous. We didn't have any in the dirt shows. So the clothes were all, they were all gorgeous clothes. So I started a rental department. And in the first year, we made over $500,000. And that's used clothes. So they were very excited. They were very excited. And then what would happen also when we got overloaded, I would give the clothes to It's a Wrap. It's in Burbank.
Oh, yes, yes.
So whatever I didn't want to keep, the overflow, I would give it to It's a Wrap. And then they would give us so much money. And then I would put that back into next year's budget.
I didn't know that It's a Wrap had been around since the 80s.
Well, her mother, Tiara's mother, ran it first. And it started with furniture. She worked in an office at Universal. And after the shows, they wanted to get rid of furniture. And she started doing consignment, and then it moved into wardrobe. But yeah, if you go in there, there's up above the door, there's an outfit I did for Alyssa, her leather outfit. It's her Power Woman outfit.
For
and
who?
they have Alyssa Milano.
Oh, from Charmed?
From Charmed. and they have it hanging up on their wall. And it's a wrap. I said, there's my costume up there.
Oh
So
my
that was
gosh.
cute.
That's so fun. Oh, okay. All right. I think we actually have to wrap up
Yeah, before we all melt.
before we all melt. It's gotten
It's
very hot
hot.
in here.
But you can call me back anytime.
Okay.
Excellent. One more thing I want to say. It's really clear as you're talking about your career and the work that you've done and the people you've worked with, that by example, you've shown how important it is in life in general to just be kind, to be professional, to just do the work. And, you know, good things will happen.
That is, it's so amazing you said that, because my last interview was, I was honored at the Designers Guild. 4 of us were honored, 3 of us. And at the end of my speech, I said, you know, we're all there doing the same thing, working, and you work to get a job done. And I did say that. I said, all we should do is just be kind to each other. That's exactly what I said. It's so funny you brought that up. I always try to keep a lovely work atmosphere. Yeah.
That's amazing.
Thank you.
What an amazing career for
It
a
was
little girl
incredible.
from Belfast.
Yes, yes. But
Oh,
I was very lucky, very, very, very blessed. I always say I've been blessed more than anything.
That's amazing. And with just such joy. There's such joy coming from you. I wish everybody could be in the room with us for it. All right.
Thank you.
For today's audiography, you can find the It's a Wrap resale boutique at itsawraphollywood.com or on Facebook and Instagram at It's a Wrap. Links in the description.
Also, I recommend an interview with Eilish Zebrasky by the Costume Designers Guild. And the link for that will be on the website. It's on YouTube. The book I'm going to shout out today is 50 Fashion Looks That Changed the 1980s by Paula Reed. And shout out to SAG-AFTRA for walking out and standing strong for actors and the future of entertainment as we know it. If you want to hear what a fiery speech sounds like, click the link in our description to hear SAG President Fran Drescher's strike announcement speech that'll knock your socks off. Oh my gosh, Sharon, guess what we are doing next episode?
We are doing It's a Living, the ABC and syndicated sitcom about waitresses working at the restaurant at the top of the Bonaventure Hotel in beautiful downtown Los Angeles.
I can't wait because we are going to have Jane Espenson and Drew Greenberg, 2 amazing modern writer and producers, come on and talk with us about their thoughts about It's a Living. And I can't wait. It's going to make so much crazy sense.
Can't wait for the listeners to hear why they picked this show. Out of all the 80 shows that they could have picked, this is the one that they chose.
So get ready, tune in, and pack up your waitress aprons.
Please join us. Who are your favorite 80s TV ladies? You can contact us through the website and tell us what shows and ladies we should be covering.
Our website is 80stvladies.com. That's 80stvladies.com. And we are on Instagram, Twitter, and all the social channels at 80s TV Ladies.
If you're liking this podcast, please make sure to rate and review. It helps a lot. We hope 80s TV Ladies brings you joy and laughter and lots of fabulous new and old shows to watch, all of which will lead us forward toward being amazing ladies of the 21st century.
Let's go.